Wow, what a day. New York City Fire Department staffers booing Attorney General Letitia James at a department promotion ceremony. This happened on Thursday. Well, now the top brass at the FDNY want to hunt those people down. The chief is promising to punish any firefighter who they say broke protocol. The New York Post obtained an email from the chief of the department saying that he recommends anybody who protested come forward so that the commissioner, Laura Kavanaugh, will not have to, quote, hunt them down. A spokesperson is pushing back on that, telling Fox News Digital that no one is being hunted. They want whoever broke department regulations to come forward. Joining me right now is New York Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis, member of the House Ways and Means Committee and the Republican Conference Whip. Congresswoman, good to see you. What a day for Letitia James. Your reaction to all of this?
Well, you know, that's why they call them New York's bravest. They're not afraid to speak their mind either. And look, Letitia James is trying to burn down our justice system, and the firefighters are calling her out on it. They see what she is doing, the injustice that she's conducted against President Trump, and they don't like it. And so, look, this is silly to go after these firefighters. They have the ability to speak their mind, free speech as well, similar to what we saw at the State of the Union, right? Kareem Nicolou, who is a Marine who died at Abbey Gate because of the botched Afghanistan withdrawal. His father yelled out his name, and he was escorted out and then arrested. And he was trying to bring attention to the fact that the ISIS-K killer who killed those 13 Marines, he was released from Bagram Air Base because of the command to close that air base prior to the evacuation of our citizens. And then when they saw him approaching the gate, sniper wanted to take him out, and he was told not to. And that is why 13 Marines died. And so we have a freedom of speech here, and it's not just if the Democrats agree.
Well, I mean, that's very disturbing. How should we be viewing this? You've got the gentleman that you're talking about still obviously in mourning that he lost his son, and the other son actually committed suicide afterwards, so he lost two sons. And he speaks his mind at the State of the Union, and he gets arrested. And now the New York firefighters, they're trying to speak their mind, trying to make a point to Letitia James, and now they're supposed to be hunted down by leadership at the Fire Department of New York. Where is freedom of speech? This is very disturbing.
It is disturbing, and we just have to have their back. We just need to keep fighting. Multiple members have called for the charges to be dropped against that Marine father. And here we're gonna continue to back the FDNY here in New York City. These firefighters should not be reprimanded. They should not be retaliated against. You know, they were cheering for someone they like, President Trump, and they were booing somebody they didn't like. I mean, deal with it. They shouldn't have brought Letitia James, who's a very polarizing figure at this moment, to speak to them in the first place.
Well, meanwhile, New York Governor Kathy Hochul is ordering more than 700 National Guard troops to go to the subways, patrol the New York City subways. The troops can randomly search bags, check for weapons. Here's the governor's response when asked about the subway bag checks. Watch.
What happens if you don't want your bag searched?
Then go home. We're not going to search you. You can say no, but you're not taking the subway.
I mean, criminals with ties to MS-13 and other gangs reportedly selling fake green cards and Social Security cards to migrants on street corners in Queens. Congresswoman, she's not doing anything about that. But, of course, this has become a big business given the migrants in New York right now.
Yeah, look, we've been pointing to these policies that the Democrats have put in place that have caused crime to surge. I was one of the first people to call for police officers to be put in our subways, and people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez saying we were trying to turn New York City into a police state. The reality is that Democrats have pushed these policies, whether it's the raise the age law, whether it's the bail reform, whether it's sanctuary city policies, that have put people who are committing illegal activity first. They're protecting them, and they continue to do so. And what you just said is very disturbing. We have individuals here who are here illegally. They're committing all sorts of crimes. So you mentioned selling green cards and stuff, but look, they're pickpocketing. They have well over 1,200 arrests tracing back to migrant shelters in our city. people being repeatedly arrested and released, and they're going back to the luxury hotel room that we, the taxpayers, are paying for them to stay in because our mayor is misinterpreting the right to shelter law. It's why I've continued to say that they have to stop doing this. The Democrats are the ones who control this city and state. They have the power to make the changes. On the federal level, I saw Joe Biden at the State of the Union the other day, and I told him straight to his face when he walked into the room that he needs to secure the border because Americans are dying. He claims again that he needs authority. He does not need any more authority. We know that he used 1182 and 1225, those sections of Title VIII immigration law, to dismantle our border. So I told him, use the same authority you used to dismantle our border to put it back together. You can reinstate remain in Mexico, you can end catch and release, you can change a parole and asylum, you can shut down the border altogether. In fact, the murderer of Lake and Riley was given parole by this president. It was one of the rules changes that allowed him to enter into this country.
Yeah. But I mean, is this really the right use of our National Guard to be checking bags? I mean, that's one issue that I have with this whole thing. They're standing there checking people's bags. These people are commuting to work, okay? And then you've got AG Merrick Garland pledging to fight voter ID laws. What? I mean, what is wrong with having a voter ID? The Attorney General was with Vice President Kamala Harris in Alabama a week ago. He pledged to fight voter ID laws and any election integrity measures that he deemed discriminatory. How is a voter ID discriminatory? Because it doesn't include an illegal?
Yeah. You know what? It's interesting because they always say that it infringes somehow the rights of African Americans. Meanwhile, if you poll African Americans, they overwhelmingly want voter ID laws in place, as do the vast majority of Americans. I think it's like a 70 or 80% issue, people supporting voter IDs. States that have them, they're happy with them. New York should have them. It's one of the biggest things I hear from my constituents is why don't we have to show anything when we go and vote? And I agree with them. It's why I'm sponsoring a bill on the federal level that would require voter ID throughout the nation. And going back to your question about the National Guard, you're absolutely right. What we need is more police officers, Maria. We are down thousands of police officers here in New York City because they've driven them out. They are retiring. They are leaving in droves because they've made their lives so miserable, their jobs so difficult. And so we need more police officers, and we need the laws to allow them to do their job.
Yeah, well, look, then there's this. Former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo will be on Capitol Hill this week. He's appearing before the House subcommittee on the coronavirus pandemic over his handling of nursing homes during COVID. Cuomo ordering nursing homes to admit patients who tested positive for COVID. We know how that went, Congresswoman. What do you think how does this play out?
Well, I'm a member of that subcommittee. I pushed very hard to get Andrew Cuomo to come before our committee because 15,000 seniors died in New York in our nursing homes as a result of the orders he put in place that were not in compliance with federal guidelines. He should have never put COVID-positive patients in with nursing homes. We knew our seniors were the most vulnerable. And then he even did it after there were alternatives, when there were the U.S. Navy comfort ship, when there were makeshift hospitals set up, like in my district at South Beach Psychiatric Center on Staten Island. So we have a lot of questions for Andrew Cuomo. We look forward to having him come and testify. It's a shame we had to do it by subpoena because he refused to comply for nearly 2 years.
Well, all right. Where is this going, though? I mean, there was the ship that President Trump had put in place on the West Side that could have been used for this purpose.
That's
rather
right.
than putting them in nursing homes.
That's right. He could have used the U.S. Navy comfort ship or South Beach Psych. I think the issue here is that, look, Americans want answers. We want to see where it leads. We want to know what was the reason he made these decisions? What led to it? Was it just lack of resources or places to put people, or was there more to it? So that's what we're trying to find out, and then we'll see from there.
All right, we'll watch that. Congresswoman, thank you. Good to see you. Nicole Malliotakis this morning.